The Narragansett runestone back in December of 1984. A man who had been hunting for quahog claims in the Pojak Point region of the Narragansett Bay noticed a large stone slab that had strange markings that had been scratched into its surface. After spending a considerable time attempting to pull the stone from the region but being completely unsuccessful as the stone weighed more than 2.5 tons, the quahogger quickly reported the slab to the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission shortly after. This led to a short expedition by the Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission that located the stone during the brief period in which it was visible within low tide, and found that it had originated from upland and most likely was down in the bay after extreme events of erosion. The stone, however, was not removed from the bay during this time. During 2012, when the stone disappeared from the waters after having been stolen, forcing the State Attorney General's Environmental Unit and DEM's Criminal Investigation Unit to spend more than a year before finally recovering the stone from the stone thief. It would be at this time of recovery that a strange character known as Everett Brown would come forward claiming that the rune stone belonged to him, as he and his brother claimed to have carved the runes into the rock back in 1964. When officials questioned why the man had not stepped forward after its initial discovery, he dismissed such questions on the grounds that he had merely forgotten and only recently remembered. Interestingly enough, there's a substantial amount of evidence that the stone predated the supposed carvings of 1964 and that the runes are legitimate in nature. However, given the conditions of erosion and lack of further evidence to date, further information and the theory surrounding the Narragansett runestone is limited and remains a mystery to this day as to its true origins. The impenetrable Sacsayhuaman Walls, located at the northern outskirts of the city of Cusco, Peru, is an ancient Inca city with walls so impenetrable built atop difficult maneuver mountainous regions that archaeologists have often had trouble trying to explain the creation of the city and the ancient building methods used for its creation. The site has often been referred to as an example of Cyclopean masonry, named after the ancient Greek mythology involving the Cyclops race that supposedly built massive and impenetrable structures by hand without the use of mortar of any kind. The Sacsayhuaman Wall appears to have been built in the same way, utilizing massive stones, each of which weighing more than 128 metric tons, with the largest stone weighing more than 200 metric tons, without the use of mortar of any kind. When the site was first visited by the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro, he described the location as the following. On top of a hill, the Inca had a very strong fort surrounding wood masonry walls, of stones and having two very high towers. And in the lower part of this wall, there were stones so large and thick that it seemed impossible that human hands could have set them in place. The stones were so close together and so well fitted at the point of a pin could not have been inserted in one of the joints. Additional text described that the compound was occupied with a number of rooms that were filled with arms, lances, arrows, darts, clubs, bucklers, and large oblong shields, which led many to believe that the site was still being occupied by a number of natives throughout the region. Oddly enough, archaeological evidence today shows that the site had not been lived in since roughly 900 CE, and that the remains of pottery and other goods were far older than anyone had previously realized. Depictions of ancient Egyptian giants. Back in 1901, archaeologists discovered the remains of the ancient Egyptian king Sanecht, of whom was the ruling pharaoh during the Third Dynasty of Egypt, and was often regarded in ancient Egyptian depictions as being one of the single most powerful Egyptian pharaohs to have ever walked the earth. It was this power that often saw King Sanecht depicted roughly 7 times larger than others when portrayed on ancient hieroglyphs. Archaeologists had often believed that the more powerful a king's influence was, the larger he was depicted, and so often argued that the size of his hieroglyphs were not indicative of his actual height and was more a representation of his power. It was not until his remains were discovered that the theory was put into question. However, as the skeletal structure and size of the ancient king showed Egyptologists that the ancient king Sanecht was actually a victim of gigantism. Gigantism in the scientific world refers to a special condition in which an individual experiences excessive growth hormone during their childhood, usually caused by an adenoma, known as a tumor on the pituitary gland. In the modern day, this has led to individuals ranging in height from 7 feet to an incredible 9 feet tall. the largest recorded height only recently made in 1940. Another interesting fact to look at is the depiction of the builders of the pyramids in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. It is a common fact known amongst Egyptologists that the ruling class of ancient Egypt was often depicted as 2 to 3 times the size of the average population. This is believed to be due to the importance of the figure, and so it was a requirement to depict the ruling class in such a manner. It could be that these depictions were far more accurate than previously known, and the ruling class of Egypt could have been an advanced race of giants. Back in 820 AD, the Sultan al-Rashid al-Mamun dedicated to open the Great Pyramid, upon which he was told that the structure had been built by giants, who were referred to as the Shadi, which roughly translated to superhuman beings, and that within these pyramids they had stored a great treasure beyond the knowledge of man. Given these strange discoveries of gigantism that researchers are only now beginning to understand in the modern day, there are many wondering if the ancient depictions of giants from the past could have been true depictions of creatures often seen as strange and possessing power that may not have been entirely human. The Newport Tower, Rhode Island, found in the Toro Park, located in Newport, Rhode Island. There stands the remains of an old stone windmill that was once used as a major ammunition storage depot during the American Revolutionary War and stands as a symbol in the modern day of American independence. Although many might dismiss it as another historical site of American history, the tower itself has been at the center of intense debate relative to the reveal of that its construction is believed to have predated the European colonization of the area and have been built by pre-Columbian transoceanic contactees. Back in the year 1837, a Danish archaeologist by the name of Carl Christian Raffin believed that the Newport Tower actually predated any of the European colonies that were established in the area, and that it was evidence that previously believed Nordic expeditions that may have passed through the area had built the tower not to serve as a windmill but as an old Nordic church. Additionally, an archaeologist by the name of Philip Ainsworth hypothesized that the structure had been built between the 11th and 14th century given its construction style, and that the existence of fireplaces throughout the tower showed evidence that the original purpose of the construction could not have been used for a windmill, as the flour would have been too flammable for the existence of fireplaces throughout its construction. There's no evidence of the structure having been used as a church or a windmill, and the Nordic origins of the tower are still under debate as no concrete evidence for either theory has been established. The Westford Knight, back in 1873, in a printed edition of the Gazette of Massachusetts, was a lone article detailing a strange carved rock that, at the time of the article, was believed to have been made by a local Native American tribe, as the impressions of the rock predated any known post-Columbian transatlantic contact people. It was not until 1954 when the president of the Archaeological Society of Connecticut visited the carved rock and began to notice additional impressions and indentations in the rock that seemed to match a sword and shield of European origin. After discussing this finding with a man by the name of T.C. Lethbridge, surrounding a theory of Nordic people having once possibly ventured through the region, the two archaeological experts believed that the carvings in the rock were evidence of such Nordic expeditions. Interestingly, would then visit the carvings and claim that the figure more accurately resembled a medieval knight from the 14th century, and that the sword carving on the rock was not that of a Nordic sword, but rather that of a hand and a half-wheel pommel sword, of which was common in the 14th century in North Britain. It was after this discovery that the rock would be named the Westford Knight, named after the town of Westford, Massachusetts, where the carvings resided. The disappearance of Robin Graham. With all respect, the disappearance of Robin Graham is quite literally a Hollywood horror story. The 18-year-old disappeared in November 1970 on the Hollywood freeway in Los Angeles. As the investigation unraveled, things began to get really quite spooky. Graham had been out partying that fateful night and had been dropped back to her car by a group of college friends. After setting off home, she was taken her car stalled near the Santa Monica off-ramp on the freeway. Police officers on their regular loop stopped and offered to call a tow truck for Graham, but she declined the offer and explained she was going to a phone box to call her parents to come and pick her up. After completing the loop, the officers stopped a second time to check in with Graham, where she explained she'd called her parents. Satisfied, the officers drove on. The officers drove past Graham one final time around 2 a.m., but did not stop this time, as they saw her with a dark-haired man, estimated to be in his late 20s, who they presumed to be the family member that Graham had contacted. The officers also observed Robin seemingly willingly climb into the man's car and drive off. This was the last time that Robin Graham was ever seen. At around 2:30 a.m., Graham's parents arrived at her car to find it locked, empty, and abandoned. And the patrolling officers who had seen her drive off explained to her parents that, in line with protocol, they had not intervened. Investigators quickly began to link Graham's disappearance to a series of chilling abductions of young women in North California in the few years before the incident. After reading the Los Angeles Times coverage of the disappearance, a woman came forward to the authorities with an eerily similar story to that of Robin Graham. She explained that she had been stranded on the Hollywood freeway earlier that same night when she was approached by a man driving a light blue Corvette who claimed that he was an off-duty policeman and offered her a lift. She refused the offer and was later to identify the stranger that she and possibly Robin had spoken with as a man named Bruce Davis. Davis had a sinister backstory, being heavily linked to the Manson family, a murderous cult in California. However, the police were more interested in Bruce Davis, suspected of being the deranged Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer haunted North California between 1968 and 1970. In truly sadistic Jack the Ripper style, he would haunt the press with cryptic messages expressing his love for killing humans. The killer was known to strike on the full moon. In a supernatural twist, and like many of the killer's victims, Robin Graham disappeared on a full moon night. Whatever happened to Robin Graham, a very clear message emerges from the events on the 15th of November 1970. Never accept a ride from a stranger. So there we have 3 spine-chilling roadside disappearances. The fact that they occurred on busy highways makes them even more sinister and perhaps more difficult to accept, given their very public location. Roads connect us to our loved ones and lead us to places full of memories. Sadly for some, memories of their loved ones are all that the victims' families are left. Carroll A. Deering. The Carroll A. Deering was built in Maine in 1919. It was the last ship to be ever made by G.G. Deering Company, and it was designed to carry large amounts of coal. On August 22, 1920, the ship set sail to Rio de Janeiro with Captain William H. Merritt, his son Sewell, and a 10-man crew. A few days into the trip, Captain Merritt became very ill. They made a stop in Lewes, Delaware, so the captain and his son could get off, and they were replaced with Captain Willis B. Warmell and Charles McClellan. They made their way to Brazil and delivered the coal without any problems. While in Brazil, Captain Warmell visited another captain and told him he didn't trust the crew on the Deering. He had many concerns with them, and he only trusted the engineer Herbert Bates. When the ship reached Barbados, Captain Warmell spoke with yet another captain about how troubling his crew had been, especially McClellan, who treated the rest of the crew badly. The captain he spoke with, along with 2 others, heard McClellan say that he would get Captain Warmell before they made it to Norfolk. While sailing through a storm off Cape Thea, the ship lost its anchors and chains. On January 29, 1921, the Deering came to the Cape Lookout lightship and tried to radio for help, but the radio at the lightship was out. Thomas Jacobson, the lightship's keeper, said someone tried using a megaphone since the radio was out, but the man had broken speech and didn't seem to act like an officer. He also said the crew was going around on the quarterdeck, where crewmen usually weren't allowed to be, and they also seemed confused. 2 days later, C.P. Brady spotted the Deering from the Cape Hatteras Coast Guard Station. The ship was stuck with its sails still set on the edge of Diamond Shoals. Due to bad weather, rescue ships couldn't get near it until February 4th. By the time the rescue crew got to the ship, it was taking on water and had been abandoned. Strangely, almost everything inside the Deering was damaged, but it didn't seem to have happened completely by accident. It appeared that the binnacle box had been forced open and broken with a sledgehammer found nearby. The ship was missing various things such as navigation equipment, life rafts, and the crew's personal items. They also found food left on the stove, leading them to believe they were preparing food at the time the ship was abandoned. The Deering was damaged beyond repair and was destroyed. The government launched an investigation to find out what happened, but no official conclusion could be made. The ship had been sailing away from any bad weather and there was no evidence of piracy. Many believed there may have been a mutiny, which would explain the man Thomas Jacobson saw trying to get help. They also considered the idea that when the ship got stuck, the crew got away on lifeboats and were swept out to sea. None of the crew was ever found, and neither was any wreckage or lifeboats. The story of Carol A. Deering is one of the most popular mysteries among sailors. It is now often referred to as the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. Many people have theories about what happened, but it is likely that no one will ever know the truth. Cincinnati radiation experiments. Seen as one of the most morally bankrupt and disgusting experiments ever conducted on the U.S. population is that of the Department of Defense-funded project known as the Cincinnati radiation experiments. It is estimated that over the course of about 11 years with more than $670,000 US dollars in funding, a doctor by the name of Eugene L. Sanger conducted illegal radiation experiments on unknowing African-American citizens alongside a team of 14 other scientific researchers. According to the investigation, under the support of the Defense Atomic Support Agency and the Department of Defense, research radiologist Eugene L. Sanger began studying the effects of radiation against individuals for the purpose of better understanding the effects nuclear war would have on soldiers hit with large doses of radiation. This led to the researcher conducting 5 years of experiments on African Americans and low-income patients without their consent, resulting in massive doses of radiation given under the guise of claiming that it was nothing more than medical treatment for basic illnesses. The irradiated patients experienced symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, severe cognitive impairment, and even death. During the study, more than 100 patients were illegally irradiated, including 3 children 10 and 13. The experiment was not uncovered and brought to light until research students working as assistants to the researchers began to notice that large doses of radiation were being administered to patients that otherwise would not have needed the treatment. Originally, the research students were intimidated not to come forward, with Eugene Sanger claiming that the students were not educated enough to go against the medical advice of the lead researchers, but eventually came together and reported the illegal activity for it to be stopped. The Smoky Mountains disappearance. Father's Day weekend 1969 will never be forgotten by the Martin family, sadly not for happy reasons. On the 14th of June that year, Dennis Martin and his grandfather, father, and younger brother headed to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for their annual family camp, accompanied by family friends with their 2 young boys. Dennis, a shy boy, mentally about a year behind his peers, was known to respond to any call of his name, even from strangers. That day, the group had hiked to Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail in the park, planning to camp there overnight. The 4 boys began playing a game of hide and seek in the overgrowth, planning to surprise the adults. Minutes later, 3 of the 4 boys jumped out of the trees, but Dennis was nowhere to be seen. After waiting for a few minutes to see if he would appear, Dennis' father William began to worry and split the group up to search for his son. The time was around 4:30 in the afternoon. Dennis's grandfather Clyde reached the park's ranger station at around 8:30 p.m. Upon his arrival, rain began to lash down, making the search more difficult. Trails were washed away, and with temperatures dropping to around 10 degrees Celsius, the odds of finding Dennis were getting lower and lower. In the days that followed, the search party grew to nearly 1,400 members. So many people looking for Dennis to clues being obscured and a general lack of organization within the group. The U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, even joined the search to no avail. Despite worsening weather conditions over the next few days, footprints were eventually discovered by a nearby stream. Authorities attributed them to Boy Scouts camping in the area, but retired park ranger Dwight MacArthur believes that the prints likely belonged to Martin. The search officially ended in September 1969, with Dennis presumed dead, most likely after getting lost and perishing in the awful conditions on the night of his disappearance. However, Dennis' father was convinced that his son had been abducted. After all, the campsite wasn't far from a track that Dennis could easily have been driven away on. This theory was backed up by the Key family, who had been camping in the vicinity at the time of the disappearance. A few days after Dennis went missing, the Key family reported having heard an enormous sickening scream, before seeing a hairy man walking stealthily through the woods near where the scream had come from. There are discrepancies in the recount of the Key story, but some say that the man had something bright red slung over his shoulder. Disturbingly, Dennis was wearing a red t-shirt the day he went missing. Alas, the area was never searched. In 1985, an illegal ginseng hunter came forward saying that he discovered remains about 3 miles from. However, fearing prosecution for his illegal hunting, he had kept the discovery to himself for years. This time the area was searched, but the bones were long gone, likely scattered by animals. Theories abound as to what really happened to Dennis Martin. Did he simply get lost and perish in the harsh conditions, dying from natural causes, starvation, or even animal attack? Or did something much more sinister happen to the little boy? How an innocent child cruelly disappeared that weekend in 1969 in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Disappearance of Laura Bradbury. The final case we're going to talk about today is the heartbreaking disappearance of Laura Bradbury. 3-year-old Laura Bradbury, along with her 2 parents and older brother, were camping in the Joshua Tree National Park in 1984. It was on October 18th that Laura, along with her then 8-year-old brother Travis, went to the portable restrooms at the campground they were staying at. Travis left Laura outside whilst he was gone. A search party of 250 people with the assistance of helicopters and dogs scoured the national park for Laura. After no breakthrough within 3 days, the police ended their search. Despite this, the Bradbury family showed no sign of stopping, handing out millions of flyers and even appearing on national TV to get the word out. They also set up a dedicated hotline for any information. A bearded man thought to be in his 50s, described as pot-bellied with a blue van, was seen around the area right before Laura disappeared, and then later near Burns Canyon. Michael, Laura's father, began to lose faith in the police and slammed them for not following up enough on tips coming through, telling reporters that the police were incompetent or lazy or both, and even went as far to suggest a cover-up. Michael then found out about Toby Santangelo and Clifford Laville, and the fact that they supposedly told police information regarding the suspected kidnapper, but it was apparently investigated and deemed not credible. These 2 men were then found killed shortly after coming forward. 2 years later, in 1986, a child's skull was found a couple of miles away from the campsite. However, it was never able to be proven it was Laura's. However, new tests were carried out on the skull in 1990, and they found the skull was a 99% match to Laura. Since 2009, Michael has been requesting the transfer of the skull found to a mortuary. But because there has yet to be a death certificate issued, the remains cannot be released. During an interview in 2010, Michael said that he was shown 2 completely different skulls during the investigation. A smaller partial skull shortly after the remains were found and a larger full skull later on in the investigation. There were 3 other tests carried out, including one using hair from Laura's hairbrush, did not match the skull. What happened to Laura Bradbury remains a mystery to this day. Sweeping statues. Hobbs is a small town in New Mexico on the edge of the vast Chihuahuan Desert. The sweeping vistas make a gorgeous backdrop for the many churches, including Our Lady of Guadalupe. The church itself has a modest interior with the classic aisle and altar, which provides services in English and Spanish. Its highlight is undoubtedly the brass statue of Our Lady herself, from which the church takes its name. She is rendered in gold, with a green shawl and a wreath of rays behind her. But the decoration is not what makes her unique. In May 2018, the statue of Our Lady began to weep. Since at least the 1600s, Catholics have reported statues of Virgin Mary that appear to spontaneously weep. These crying statues have been reported all over the world, in France, Italy, the US, and more. One of the earliest recorded instances of Mary's statue weeping was in 1643. Population of Rottweiler, Germany, was under siege from the French. 42 men and women crowded into the church begging God for salvation. As they spoke to Mary, they saw a miracle. Her eyes appeared to move back and forth, and she wept. Catholics and non-Catholics alike witnessed the spectacle. Nearly 400 years later, Mary continues to weep. In 2003, a Bangladeshi statue in a glass case began to weep, drawing thousands of onlookers. In 2017, a statue in Telangana, India, dripped red liquid from the eyes. Back in Hobbs, New Mexico, the Our Lady statue cried for over a month. Onlookers gathered to pay respects, and as they did, they noticed a strong smell. Upon examination, the liquid turned out to be a mixture of oil and balsam called the sacred chrism, the fragrant mixture which is used for anointment and ceremonial purposes within the church. The statue was closely examined, including the hollow interior, but no source of the liquid was found. As quickly as Mary's tears appeared, they dried up. By the end of July 2018, she was no longer weeping, yet the oil mixture returned months later in September. Despite a lack of formal acknowledgement from church authorities, Our Lady of Guadalupe continues to draw crowds today, desperate to see her cry. Helen Brash. Our second case is the strange story behind the disappearance of Helen Brash, who, unlike the other victims we will discuss, lived a life of luxury and opulence which most of us could only imagine. Born in 1911, Helen Brash was extremely wealthy due to the profits of the confectionery empire built by her late father-in-law. The death of her husband had made her a multimillionaire, with an estimated fortune of $17 million. Helen loved animals and used some of her enormous fortune to deal in horses, using another portion to set up an animal rights organization. At the time of her disappearance, Helen had recently begun a relationship with a Chicago man called Richard Bailey, who was infamous for his womanizing habits. One day in 1977, Helen attended a routine checkup at a medical clinic in Minnesota. Before she returned to her hotel room, she stopped at a gift store where she told the assistant, "I'm in a hurry. My houseman is waiting." This may have been the last time she was ever seen alive. Following her disappearance, Brash was declared legally dead in 1984. What were the circumstances behind the disappearance? After 37 years as a cold case, in 2015, evidence emerged that shed some light on the mystery. Documents were uncovered along with other evidence, which suggests that Brash may have been kidnapped, beaten and shot on the orders of a notorious Chicago gangland horse dealer. It is alleged that her body was disposed of in a nearby steel furnace. Some have suggested that she became a target after threatening to alert the authorities to criminal activity perpetrated by the sinister horse mafia that operated around Chicago at this time. Helen's butler, Jack Matlick, was considered a key figure in the investigation. However, he was never charged in connection with Helen's disappearance. Matlick swore that Helen had boarded a flight from Minnesota to Chicago's O'Hare Airport. However, there is no evidence she ever boarded the flight. Brash's lover, Richard Bailey, was sentenced to 30 years in 1995 for racketeering and conspiracy, which included wholesale frauds against Helen Brash and a number of other women. Interestingly, federal prosecutors also stated their belief in Bailey's involvement in Helen Brash's disappearance. In 2019, he was released from prison aged 89. Matlick died of natural causes in 2011 and was never charged with anything in connection to Brash's disappearance. Helen's family members are buried in Unionport, Ohio, near her birthplace of Hopedale. The marble monument includes an empty tomb with her name on it, in the hope that her body may one day be recovered. Why did it take so long for this additional information to emerge? With only sketchy details and much vital information still missing, will we ever know the full story of what happened to Helen Brash? The disappearance of Zahir Raihan was one of the most famous writers, novelists, and filmmakers in Bangladesh before 1972. His most famous film piece was Stop Genocide, a 20-minute documentary that highlighted the murders and atrocities that the Pakistan Army was carrying out against the people of East Pakistan. This film, along with many others he made, showed his transformation from an artist to a freedom fighter. In 1971, he became an active fighter in the Liberation War of Bangladesh. His main weapon during this war were his documentary films, where he intended to show the world what his people were fighting for. Rayhan's brother, Shahidullah Kaiza, was a writer and key freedom fighter in the Bangladesh Liberation War. Together, the brothers collected medicine, food, and other essential supplies and delivered them to different stronghold posts around the fighting areas. It was noted that other freedom fighters held the brothers in high regard for their heroic contributions during the war. After the war ended in 1971, the Pakistan Army formed an alliance with locals in Bangladesh to carry out the plan of killing the area's leading intellectuals. On this list of creatives was Zahir Rayhan's brother, who on December 14, 1971, was captured by the Pakistan Army. After hearing of his brother's capture, Zahir Rayhan embarked on the mission to find and liberate his brother. Even though he was known for being a fierce fighter, many of his revolutionary friends urged him not to go, believing that the Pakistan Army would be looking for him too. Blinded by the love for his brother, Rayhan ignored all warnings and proceeded to lead a search party across Bangladesh. It is believed that Rayhan followed the trail of his captured brother to the capital city of Dakshin. Entering the suburb of Mirpur, Rayhan and his search party were ambushed by soldiers of the Pakistan Army who were hiding in surrounding buildings. Although there were many casualties in this ambush, Rayhan's body was not amongst the dead. Therefore, it is possible that Rayhan might have been a lucky escape and continued on with his search for his brother. The only thing known for sure is that neither brother was ever seen again. The Bat Creek Inscription. In 1889, the Smithsonian Bureau of Ethnology led an expedition that was directed by famed entomologist Cyrus Thomas, of whom was known for his study in the Native American cultures and languages during this time. According to the expedition reports, a stone tablet, later named the Bat Creek Stone Tablet, was uncovered during the archaeological expedition that Cyrus Thomas claimed had inscribed lettering that were, beyond any question, the letters of the Cherokee alphabet. Oddly enough, the Cherokee alphabet itself would not have been made until about 1821 when it was created from the existing Cherokee language by George Guess, also known as Sequoyah, of whom designed the alphabet to be used by the Cherokee people. Although at first glance, this might not appear to have been much of a mystery. The expedition team claimed that the vegetation overgrown the mound at which the Bat Creek inscription was found showed evidence of the mound having been older than a century, predating the existence of the written Cherokee alphabet. This strange realization of the odd conflict between the invention of the Cherokee alphabet and an artifact found with the inscribed lettering before the letters were invented led to an immediate worldwide puzzle that would bring experts with all different backgrounds working to try to solve the strange mystery. It would not be until a man named Cyrus H. Gordon, not to be confused with Cyrus Thomas of whom discovered the stone tablet, would work to translate the stone and uncover that the Bat Creek inscription possessed Paleo-Hebrew lettering and not that of the Cherokee alphabet. When translated, the Bat Creek inscription spelt out the phrase for Judea, a phrase that the Jewish people. Given anti-Semitic thoughts at the time, the rock would be dismissed as nothing more than a hoax to prevent any legitimacy from stemming from the Paleo-Hebrew find, leaving the origin of the stone a mystery for the modern day. Marie Man, Marie, South Australia. On June 26, 1998, Trek Smith, a helicopter pilot, was flying between Cuba, Petey, and Marie in the remote north of South Australia. As he looked down, he spotted a mysterious large humanoid drawing. Trek Smith took photographs of the geoglyph and reported about the geoglyph. The discovery of this massive geoglyph fascinated Australians and the conspiracy theorists around the world. This mysterious geoglyph was named the Marie Man. It is also known as Stewart's Giant. It depicts a native Australian man hunting with a stick or a boomerang. The exact location of the geoglyph is 60 kilometers west of Marietown in South Australia. This geoglyph is 2.6 kilometers tall and extends an area of more than 2.5 square kilometers. Archaeologists have done extensive research on the geoglyph, but they have not been able to trace its origins. Geologists believe that it was made during recent times. However, No one has come forward to take responsibility for the creation of the geoglyph, and there are no eyewitness accounts in the area who could give any hint about its creation. Some people suggest that Bardius Goldberg, who as a Northern Territory artist was the main man behind the creation of the Marine Man geoglyph. Bardius Goldberg has shown interest in creating an artwork that would be visible from space. However, when he was asked about the creation of the geoglyph, he neither confirmed nor denied that he was behind the creation. Another popular belief about the creation of the Marine Man is that it was created by the American or Australian soldiers stationed in Wimmerick Range Complex. It is a major Australian military and civil aerospace facility. Elon Musk has said that a bunch of people will probably pass away during SpaceX's early missions to Mars. Elon was talking with the founder of the X Prize Foundation when he made the comments. Elon, along with officials at SpaceX, have said they plan to get humans on the Red Planet by the year 2026, with them saying that this is several years before NASA. Elon said the following: "Going to Mars reads like that advert for Shackleton going to the Antarctic. You know, it's dangerous. It's uncomfortable and it's going to be a long journey. You might not come back alive, but it is a glorious adventure and it will be an amazing experience. Yeah, honestly, a bunch of people probably die in the beginning. It's tough going over there." End quote. He went on to say the following after the successful year SpaceX has had. "For the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth, it's been possible to extend life beyond Earth and make life multiplanetary. Humanity is the agent of life, and we have an obligation to ensure the creatures of Earth continue. Even if there is a calamity on Earth, whether it's man-made or a natural calamity, if you look at the fossil record, there are many mass extinctions. It's about ensuring we pass that threshold, where it's self-sustaining if some calamity prevents the ships from going there. What comes first? A self-sustaining city on Mars or World War III? It will be a fun and a great adventure, but it will not be a luxurious thing to start." End quote. He's currently working with experts and astrophysicists that are in the process of devising new ways to replenish the Martian atmosphere. Not only that, but they also plan to repair the planet's ecosystem to make it sustainable for human life. They hope to have achieved this by 2030. The idea of colonizing Mars is an interesting one. It's definitely been in our scope for a while now, but some argue that the missions will be pointless, saying it's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars to put humans on Mars, so why don't we use that money to help people on Earth? It's fair to say that our planet has many problems, a lot of which could be solved with money. Interestingly, though, the late Professor Hawking explained why we need to colonize other planets, saying that it's overwhelmingly known that CO2 emissions, though originally a major factor in the issue of climate change, is not alone as an acting greenhouse gas. In fact, natural water vapors in methane is a far more pressing issue regarding climate change. This is due to the fact that as temperatures have increased on the planet, this has caused more water from the ocean to form, which in turn creates more heat and more vapors, causing a snowball effect on greenhouse gases. Additionally, the agriculture industry is responsible for the majority of methane produced via the large population of cows. There are over 1 billion cows constantly digesting and releasing methane into the air that is responsible for more trapped heat compared to CO2 emissions by an additional 18%. Now, many people just assume that by reducing their emissions, we can stop the global warming issue altogether. But this is far from the truth. Many climate change experts compare the analogy to that of a car speeding towards a canyon. Reducing the speed will help to buy more time, but until the speed is zero, we're still racing towards the end. Even if the emissions are dropped by 99%, given the fact that water vapors in the atmosphere are growing each year, the situation of our planet will continue to decline as well. Considering a 100% reduction of fossil fuels, including methane caused by cows and CO2 caused by industry, seems to be an absolute impossibility. Efforts to prevent global warming seem fruitless. Within the next 100 years, the damage could be so bad that many plants using agriculture will become completely extinct. Many experts have said this is one of those situations where, although we can help our Earth, the damage has been done, and we need to look for other ways to sustain ourselves, with some saying that humans could eventually become in the future a spacefaring species, traveling from planet to planet and using its resources to sustain us. Quite possibly one of the most thought-provoking arguments made by Dr. Stephen Hawking was his claims made about the probability of events that could spell disaster for the whole of humanity. By his calculations regarding the overall probability of the Earth facing a cataclysmic event at a large enough scale to cause human extinction, Dr. Stephen Hawking stated it would take as little as 100 years before humans would be unable to inhabit our planet Earth any further. The cause for such calculations he regarded were due to several factors that most people never even took into consideration. Not only is climate change and global warming an important issue that should be addressed, but by his calculations, there is no possible way to overcome the issue regardless of any form of advancement. As dark and disturbing as Dr. Stephen Hawking's predictions of doom and extinction may be, the late research scientists also seem to have a tremendous amount of optimism relative to the coming ages of technological advancements and exploration. Dr. Stephen Hawking argued that if such an extinction-level event can be overcome, not only will humanity become far more united in its overall pursuits, but it will be a spacefaring species with self-resilience, renewable resources, and technological innovations that will have dwarfed all past human creations. Dr. Stephen Hawking most notably refers to us as planetary colonizers, and makes the overall suggestion that not only will Earth be our home, but many of the other celestial bodies in the solar system may find themselves colonized equally as well. So what do you make of space exploration? And do you think humans should be colonizing places like Mars? In recent years, the stigma around mysterious objects in our sky have come into question. As of today, it's not just everyday people that are coming forward with their stories. High-up officials and those who spend large amounts of time in the sky, such as pilots, have said that they've been seeing mysterious objects in the sky for years now, but were told not to come forward with their encounters, with some even saying that if they came forward, their jobs would be on the line. A bit harsh when you consider that these crafts are allegedly things like birds, whether balloons are natural phenomena. It seems, though, that declassified documents show that although many of these sightings get explained, there's many that remain a mystery. At the moment, there's a lot of talk around UFOs and Space Force. Insiders are saying that Donald Trump could reveal the truth about UFOs and what the government knows about them. Interestingly, it was also announced that when the president signed the $2.3 trillion relief and government funding bill back in December, it also started the ball rolling on something else. As of that date, U.S. intelligence agencies have just 180 days to release everything they know about UFOs, a subject that has been thrown into the limelight in recent months. The director of the National Intelligence and Secretary is said to have been put on the spot, and will now have to reveal everything they know about these unidentified crafts. President Trump's former intelligence director, John Radcliffe, said that there's many unexplainable UFO sightings and that many of these have remained a mystery. The bill says that officials must release what they know about unidentified aerial phenomena, and Radcliffe said the public have no idea about how many unidentified UFO sightings there are, saying that the public is kept in the dark about this kind of stuff. He said the following: "We always look for a plausible explanation, whether it can cause a disturbance, a visual disturbance, and sometimes we wonder if our adversaries have technologies that are a little further down the road, but there are instances we don't have an explanation for." End quote. He goes on to talk about all of the military pilots that have detailed their strange encounters, with others saying that these are the people that fly some of the most advanced jets, yet they are saying that unidentified crafts buzz them and are easily able to outmaneuver them. He continues with the following: "Frankly, they engage in actions that are difficult to explain, movements that are hard to replicate that we don't have the technology for, traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without making a sonic boom." End quote. Interestingly, this has been seen time and time again. These crafts are able to travel at extreme speeds without making any noise. In fact, this is one of the most common things that people report when they encounter a UFO, the fact that they make no noise. This is sometimes why people see them by accident, because they can't hear that they're nearby. Some officials have gone back on their words, though, and instead of mocking the Tovik, they've said that these crafts could pose a security threat. And although on paper that's true because they're able to do things that our modern jets can't, as far as we know, we don't have any reason to believe this. With some saying that there's never been an incident in which a UFO has tried to harm a human. And the majority of the time accidents happen is because we chase them. One of the most well-known cases is that of Thomas Mantell. Captain Thomas Mantell was an experienced pilot, boasting a flight history of 2,167 hours. Many of these hours had been served during World War II, where he fought for the Allies in the Battle of Normandy, and was rewarded with the Distinguished Flying Cross and Air Medal for his actions. In 1947, he returned to Louisville and joined the new Kentucky Air National Guard as a flight leader. However, less than a year into the new job, Mantell's career ended in tragedy when he passed away while in pursuit of an unknown flying object. The object was seen by several of Mantell's colleagues. Base Commander Colonel Guy Hicks reported it was very wide and around 1/4 the size of the full moon, while observers at the Clinton Army Airfield described it as having the appearance of a flaming red cone and having a speed greater than 500 miles per hour. It was also seen by the Kentucky State Police, who contacted Captain Mantell, requesting him to investigate the object. Alongside 2 colleagues, Mantell set off in pursuit of the large white object. When his colleagues informed him they were going to retreat and level their altitude to try and see the object more clearly, Mantell ignored them, pursuing the object in a steep climb and at a high altitude. Unfortunately, while at this altitude, Mantell blacked out from a lack of oxygen, and he and his plane crashed at a farm south of Franklin on the Tennessee-Kentucky state line. Mantell passed away on impact. His death was tragic, but also a monumental occasion in UFO history. Before this point, there had only been a few cases reporting unidentified flying objects, and most of these cases had been dismissed by the public as fans, or as the delusional sightings of insane men and women. However, Mantell was a highly respected pilot, and the fact he laid down his own life to determine what the object was resulted in an increased public concern about UFO phenomena. The official response from the Air Force line when Mantell worked was that the object was actually Venus. However, this theory has been debunked by others, who argued that on the date of Mantell's death, Venus was only 33 degrees above the horizon, and thus would not have been visible to Mantell. An official investigation was later opened, and in Project Blue Book, they concluded that the object Mantell had been chasing was a skyhook balloon, part of a top-secret project that neither Mantell nor his colleagues would have known about. The skyhook balloons were being used by the Navy to measure radiation levels in the upper atmosphere. The skyhook balloon finding has largely been accepted. However, there are still some skeptics. For example, eyewitness Glenn Mays insists that Mantell was the victim of an attack, as he swears he saw Mantell's plane explode in midair, as if the result of a bullet, while others report seeing unidentified flying objects within the area. So what do you make of these claims that the public have been kept in the dark about UFOs? SpaceX have just sent humans to the International Space Station. They even put the live feed on YouTube, with many commenting on how easy they made the process look. It's fair to say that SpaceX is making history of what it's currently achieving, with them creating some of the most sophisticated rockets, and even getting things like NASA contracts for upcoming missions. All of this is very impressive when you bear in mind the company has only been around for 18 years. With the recent Crew 2 mission, though, officials said the SpaceX rocket almost crashed into a UFO. Before the crew of the Dragon spacecraft docked to the International Space Station, it's reported by ground control that it almost collided with an unidentified flying object. U.S. Space Command, who were watching the mission, said that the collision was a possibility after they'd been tracking the unknown object. NASA spokesperson Kelly Humphrey said the following: "The NASA SpaceX team was informed of the possible conjunction by U.S. Space Command. The object being tracked is classified as unknown. The possibility of the conjunction came so close to the closest approach time that there wasn't much time to compute and execute a debris avoidance maneuver with confidence. So the SpaceX team elected to have the crew don their pressure suits, out of an abundance of caution." End quote. Officials said they were notified by the Pentagon about the mystery object around 7 hours after the spacecraft launched. As of right now, we haven't been told any more information about this object. How big it is, what it is, its true size, or why it came so close to the Dragon spacecraft. Interestingly, during the launch, many viewers noticed strange things hovering around in the background, with some saying that it looked like there were large objects buzzing the spacecraft. Some even theorized whether these were the objects that they were referring to. As the rocket was making its way to the International Space Station, debris could be seen coming off the rocket, something that is normal. But some pointed out that one object appeared to be keeping up with the rocket, with it even stopping and then flying from left to right. This strange behavior caused online users to question what this strange thing was. After all, it wasn't dropping like the other pieces of debris around it. It looked like this thing was actively trying to keep up with the Dragon spacecraft. One person said it caught their attention after the object could be seen coming from behind the craft, then saying it was going up and down and left to right, something that debris doesn't do. The object was described as being flat or shaped like a disc, and that whatever it was able to keep up with the speed of the rocket. Also, it's important to note that just because something is not able to be identified, it doesn't mean it has anything to do with aliens. Unidentified flying objects are objects that can't be identified at that moment in time, and as some have pointed out, many of these objects are seen around spacecrafts. In fact, people have spent hours watching things like the International Space Station. And this is in the hopes of seeing a UFO, something that commonly happens. Although NASA have said these are not unidentified flying objects, but rather debris and camera anomalies. So this could be what we're seeing close to the SpaceX rocket. Others are not convinced by this idea, with one user saying the following. Did anyone else see that object buzz the spacecraft? It was flying around towards the bottom of it. It was glowing white and looked quite big. This thing looked like it was staying on the same path as the rocket. Perhaps it was a piece of the rocket. I'm not sure what it was. But one thing I do know is that it was traveling fast. End quote. This isn't the first time that SpaceX has detected these strange objects, with those that have seen them saying that the movement of some of these objects seems to be completely unnatural, making sharp and sudden movements. These aren't the only mysterious objects that have been filmed in space. Other objects have been more recently filmed, including during the SpaceX Dragon launch, which carried astronauts to the ISS. Whilst the video was being live-streamed, various bizarre and strange objects were seen hovering above Earth. In another clip, a strange UFO was seen leaving Earth and moving deeper into space before one viewer said the following. After the launch of SpaceX's Falcon 9 crew demo, an object from Earth to space is rapidly launched in the 14th minute of the stream. Is this a UFO? A piece of space junk or a rocket? End quote. Others were reacting on social media during the live launch. Some viewers think they observed some UFOs at various points of the live stream, with many people sharing the clip of the event on various social media platforms. Many UFO enthusiasts commented on this stream. A range of comments were about the flashing lights which could be seen, and many people stated they saw multiple UFOs moving intensely and rapidly, which could not have resembled debris. Although space agencies have suggested that debris is the most likely explanation, this hasn't stopped believers from putting forward their theories. One believer said it's important to keep an open mind about the things that are going on in space, and did say that most of the objects you see are anomalies, space debris, or light reflecting off the camera. But did go on to note that there's some objects that can't be explained, as some of them have been observed traveling extremely fast, making 90-degree turns, and immediately stopping and then flying away again. Also, some of these unidentified crafts also match those that are seen on Earth. For example, one of these that's been seen in space is that of the Triangle, a craft that has been witnessed by thousands of people. As of right now, people are torn on what these objects are. So what you make of this interesting discovery, and what you make of the unidentified object that almost collided with the rocket. Across the world are tales of mysterious creatures. Some of the most interesting ones are those that are encountered in isolated regions, such as jungles and places like Antarctica. Interesting story is that of organism 46b. Before information surrounding organism 46b can be discussed, the environmental context must be thoroughly identified. Reports of organism 46b's area of habitation rests within that of Lake Vostok, located more than 700 feet beneath the glacial surface of the ice at its shallowest depth. And roughly it's at this depth that the ice from the Antarctic glaciers are under enough pressure to melt and form deep lakes. It's within one of these deep lakes, known as Lake Vostok, that the creature known as organism 46b resides in. A supposed leaked document surrounding the first attempts made by Russian researchers back on the 5th of February in 2012, while drilling to the lake surface, made reference to the creature known as organism 46b. The report itself was titled Organism 46b and detailed an increasingly bizarre story, in which Russian scientists claimed to have encountered a massive colossal squid residing in the lake that could release toxins into the water, could squeeze itself down into small sizes, take on weird shapes, change its physical colors, and cause a mild form of hypnotism if a person began to stare at the creature for too long. Here are quotes from the supposed letter, written by a man named Dr. Anton Padaka. We encountered organism 46b on our first day. It disabled our radio, which we later learned to our alarm was intentional. It's also able to paralyze prey from a distance of up to 150 feet by releasing its venom into the water. Tragically, my colleague and lifelong friend was taken out this way. He tread water wearing a blissful smile as the organism approached him. We watched helplessly as it used its arms to tear off his head, then popped the remains into his mouth. It was as if it had hypnotized him telepathically. It shaped itself into the form of a human diver. We thought it was one of our colleagues swimming towards us in scuba gear. By the time the closest scientists had realized what it was, it had grabbed him and torn him to bits. End quote. Some variations of the legend claim that one of the tentacles of the creature had been chopped off, but that the severed tentacle later reanimated and strangled another member of the team. The legend ends claiming that there were a few surviving members of the expedition, and that Russian officials captured the creature in an attempt to cover up the event. Fact-checking the story leads to a number of strange dead ends that come about in areas of documented factual events that otherwise should have been explored. Here is the completed timeline of the factual events of the late Vostok drilling expedition. Back in January 2011, Russian scientists Valery Lakin and Sergei Balat published a paper titled Vostok's Subglacial Lake, Details of Russian Plans Activities for Drilling and Sampling. Valery Lutkin worked at the Russian Antarctic Expedition, Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute at St. Petersburg, Russia, and Sergei Balat worked at the Petersburg Nuclear Physics Institute, Russian Academy of Sciences in Russia. The document detailed the first and only public plan for a Russian expedition into Lvovsk. Here is a portion from the introduction of the paper surrounding the expedition. The Russian Federation has developed a national project involving the drilling and sampling of Vostok Subglacial Lake, East Antarctica. The objective is to explore this extremely icy environment using a variety of techniques to identify the forms and levels of life that exist there. The project is funded by the Russian Federal Service. During the time of the published paper, the Russian Federation had yet to receive support from other nations of the world, as their borehole efforts were actively going against the Antarctic Treaty, with the United Kingdom and United States petitioning the Russian Federation against borehole techniques due to the environmental impact of the sealed lake. Their opposition was due in part to the drilling techniques used by the Russian scientists, of which included the massive use of freon and kerosene, act as a lubricant for the drilling equipment, of which would immediately drain into the lake at the point of connection. Despite the Antarctic Treaty violation, the Russian Federation continued with their efforts. Within the published paper titled Vostok's Subglacial Lake, Details of Russian Plans Activities for Drilling and Sampling, the scientists detailed a new piece of technology that would allow the borehole to use a transportation module that could be sent down into the borehole via new mechanisms and enter the lake. The diagram for the technology claims the module device and the borehole would only be 123 millimeters in diameter and impossible to send a diver into. However, given the secrecy of the project and the designs used, Such a technology could have been sealed up to send a research team into the borehole if made slightly larger. The technology also shows evidence of human-sized transportation modules, given that the module's designs had a height and width that would scale to fit a human body, and these would fit in a cylindrical tube of a height 3 times the tube's width. On October of 2011, Valerie Lukin, the co-author of the published paper, was at the Antarctic. The expedition continued for several weeks, up until the end of December, before issues first arose amongst the expedition. The reason for why Valerie Lukin first started his expedition in October of 2011 was due to October being the summer months for the Antarctic continent, keeping the location at its warmest for the expedition. The summer months only last from the beginning of October to the 5th of February. However, after the 6th, the expedition must be called off due to temperatures plummeting below 40 degrees Celsius. On the 28th of December, the Russian team claimed they had less than 5 meters left to drill before striking into the lake, and were confident they would meet their goal before the end of the Antarctic summer months. It was surely after this last transmission, however, that the team would then undergo a 6-day radio silence for reasons not entirely understood. This was an article published on the 3rd of February, 3 days before the reported breach confirmation of Lake Vostok. The world holds its breath, hoping for the best after 6 days of radio silence from Antarctica, where a team of Russian scientists is racing the clock and the oncoming winter to dig to an alien lake far beneath the ice. The team's last contact with colleagues in the unfrozen world was 6 days ago. Scientists from around the globe are unsure of the fate of the mission and the scientists themselves as Antarctica's winter draws near. Given the last transmission, it was believed that the Russian team would have boarded into Lake Vostok on the 29th of December. However, their glimpse of breach would come after a 9-day radio silence on the 6th of February, of which was the longest amount of time the expedition team could have waited before forcing the end of the expedition due to winter weather. This would have provided the team with more than 9 days to cover up any events that would have occurred shortly after the breach on the 29th of October. It's due to this that the sudden radio silence after the 28th of October provides a merit of truth to the claims of cover-up efforts, and over a week's span of time dealing with Organism 46b. Shortly after the end of the expedition, half of Valerie Lukin's research team would end their careers in the Antarctic expeditions and leave the research team without further information surrounding the members. The encounter with the Organism 46b led to the reported deaths of several top-secret Russian scientists, and so many believe that this is why the document could have been leaked. As a warning to other researchers in the area, despite the far-fetched abilities of Organism 46b, reports appear to match a number of known cases of squid and octopus entities. In fact, every single ability mentioned by the letters that Organism 46b might possess appears to match many of the abilities found in deep-sea species of cephalopods and environments that would be similar in lines. Pressure and water quality to Organism 46b. It is a detailed writing surrounding the theoretical ability of telepathic traits of the creature and how the ability could be scientifically explained. Understanding Organism 46b's ability to perform telepathic ability is both difficult and nearly impossible, as the mechanisms for telepathy are still not entirely understood in the modern day. However, assumptions and data information surrounding numerous marine animals can be made as to what might be responsible for the telepathic abilities. It's important to note that there is evidence and scientific endeavors in the realm of neuroscience, and the ability to translate the neurons near random electrical impulse firings into readable information that can be displayed or understood. In fact, back in 1999, there was a research study by Dang Yang at the University of Berkeley, California that successfully recreated what a cat observes in the physical world using pure data retrieved from visual neurons. The implications of this finding means that if someone could create a technology so sensitive and accurate in picking up electromagnetic fields, one could remotely detect these occurrences coming from the human brain and work together the data required to translate your thoughts and brain signals into readable information. If we take this theory of data retrieval from the brains of animals via sensing electrical impulses and changes in the electromagnetic field, then there is evidence of evolution granting this ability amongst life here on Earth. Referred to as electroreception, It's a sense that humans do not seem to possess that gives animals the ability to perceive natural electrical stimuli in other forms of life around them. Electrical reception on Earth has only been seen to occur almost exclusively in aquatic life, or amphibious animals that spend their time in salt water. Since salt water is a much better natural conductor compared to the surrounding air. This ability is so sensitive, in fact, that young sharks can recognize the specific characteristics and traits of electrical stimuli, and they use this to help them pick up on predators. Given the fact that organism 46b is expected to live its entire life in a completely dark underwater environment, it's possible that the species could have evolved a complex form of electroreception. Here is a detailed writing surrounding the theoretical ability of hypnotic traits within organism 46b and how the ability could be scientifically explained. Squids are one of the very few species in the world that can camouflage and change the pigments of their skin so rapidly that they can make a variety of colors. Additionally, the glass squid species is capable of using bioluminescence, and it does this to temporarily stun fish and seemingly hypnotize them to be consumed. Given the depth and lack of light deep within the underground Lake Vostok, it's of a high probability that if a large marine animal were to exist within the trap lake, they would also possess evolutionary abilities to generate bioluminescence. Bioluminescence tied with a squid's ability to alter the color of the pigments of its skin could create season-inducing colors and shape that could temporarily cause an individual to become hypnotized or undergo a seizure if one was to look directly at the creature. This could explain the hypnotic effects as reported in the leaked documents. Here is a detailed writing surrounding the theoretical ability of shape-shifting traits within organism 46b and how the ability could be scientifically explained. The species is capable of squeezing through small openings and squeezing their body size down to impossible sizes. In fact, a 600-pound octopus is capable of pushing its entire body through a hole the size of a quarter. As long as an opening is large enough to allow the creature to fit its beak through, it will travel through the opening with relative ease. It's for this reason that the claim of shape-shifting abilities of organism 46b are realistic to the species, of which it seems to have evolved from. Additionally, a borehole the size of 123 millimeters would have been more than enough of a size to fit its body through if it were to make an attempt to reach the surface of the glacier. Here is a detailed writing surrounding the theoretical ability of toxic traits within organism 46b and how the ability could be scientifically explained. The use of toxins from organism 46b seemed to stem from real-life examples of cephalopods using small amounts of venomous toxins. The blue-ringed octopus is an octopus only roughly the size of a standard golf ball, but contains enough venom to cause the demise of 26 adult men. The blue-ringed octopus also has a number of other strange abilities, such as the ability to use jet propulsion by funneling water to allow it to move faster in the water. It could be possible the organism 46b also possesses these abilities and is capable of ejecting venom. If the claims surrounding the creature are to be believed, then it has the following abilities that have allowed it to take out several individuals: shape-shifting hypnosis, camouflage colossal size, ability to shrink, telepathy, and large quantities of toxins. Given its dangers and efforts needed to be contained by the Russian Federation, as claimed by the leaked document, this could frail or mean the organism of 46b is one of the most dangerous creatures naturally living on planet Earth. Its ability to be weaponized for future efforts also seems to be a very real possibility, given the claims of the leaked document and other rumors that have surfaced around the creature. So what do you make of organism 46b? Arachnophobia is the fear of spiders. It's one of the most common fears in the world, and it affects approximately 10% of men and 50% of women. One incredible thing about the spider is that its silk is one of the strongest materials in the world, and scientists have been trying for years to replicate it, but so far haven't been able to recreate the design. Scientists have recently announced they discovered a new species of flying spider in the jungles of South America. The scientists stated this flying spider has the ability to glide midair and change direction, saying that they observed them doing this from trees. Although these spiders don't have wings, it was an unexpected discovery. The researchers said the spider is more advanced than gliding, saying that it's able to twist and change its direction at will. A group of scientists headed into the jungles of Peru with the sole purpose of studying creatures that have incredible abilities. When first seeing this elusive spider, they said that it displayed remarkable agility for an arachnid. The large spider, which is said to measure over 2 inches in diameter, was observed leaping through trees and gliding through the air, or while it changed directions several times. The researchers said that when they went into the jungle, they didn't expect to discover this ability, saying that there's no other instances of a spider being able to do this ability. Stephen Yanovic, a tropical anthropologist at the University of Louisville in Kentucky, said the following about the discovery. "We really did not expect to see gliding behavior in spiders." End quote. Robert Dudley, a professor of integrative biology at the University of California, continued with the following. "My guess is that many animals living in the trees are good at aerial gliding, from snakes and lizards to ants and now spiders. If a predator comes along, it allows the animal to jump and glide to the nearest tree, rather than landing in the understory or a stream." End quote. The researchers continued by saying that the spud has likely picked up this ability in order to get away from predators, and said that they've seen ants do similar things when they're approached by predators, saying that they will actively try and land on a tree instead of falling onto the forest floor. Another researcher said the following, "As far as adult arthropods are concerned, only ants, bristletails, and spud is used directed at elder scent. However, the wingless immature stages of various insects that are winged as adults can also glide really well. These include cockroaches, stick insects, and tree bugs." This study, like the first report of gliding ants, raises many questions that are wide open for further study. For instance, how accurate is the vision of these spiders? How do they target a tree? What is the effect of their hairs or spines on aerodynamic performance? End quote. Paper was published in the journal Interface of Royal Society. As we explore the strange mysteries of the world around us and work to tackle increasingly complex phenomena, it's of no surprise then that there will be an incredible number of natural phenomena that even the brightest minds of our generation can't explain. These strange mysteries will often go unnoticed, or quickly become forgotten about by those who are not interested in accepting the fact that we know so little about our universe. One such instant involves that of spiders seemingly falling from the sky. Similar to that of the strange appearance of star jelly, it appears that unexplainable precipitation is quite a common occurrence all around the world. There have been myths and rumors from all around the world that make claims of fish, snakes and jellyfish, or octopus raining from the sky. But probably one of the strangest stories comes from a town in Brazil. Located in a small town 250 miles west of Sao Paulo, was a community struck by an event of spiders raining down from the sky. Experts believe that spider eggs were inhabiting the thick clouds up above, and hatched all at once to leave millions of spiders softly falling from the sky. This led to the entire town being covered in the cobwebs of millions of spiders that dangled from rooftops and telephone wires all across the area. Additionally, scientists have claimed that around the area and its neighboring cities, it's not an unusual sight to see a sky speckled with spiders, and that it's capable of creating tiny web-like parachutes and traveling thousands of feet into the air. But this is only when the wind conditions are just right. It appears then that this event appears to be seasonal, that can occur once every few years, and lead to a complete annihilation of native flying species, mosquitoes and other pests that spiders seem to completely rid the area of, and it's been described as a sort of large-scale cleanup event. Unfortunately, there seems to be no way to predict when this event will occur, and no working theory as to how the spider eggs can be planted, stay up, and survive the strong wind forces above the earth and inside thundering clouds. As mentioned earlier, another strange object is that of star jelly. For some inexplicable reason, however, there appears to be a common occurrence of a different type of precipitation that does not seem to fit the normal status quo. Nicknamed star jelly, scientists have uncovered reports and evidence of a strange jelly-like substance falling from the sky at random times from all around the world, in trees, on top of buildings, and covering hard mountainous regions. Despite the placement of this jelly-like substance, Scientists claim the star jelly is nothing more than frog ovum that has expanded from the exposure to rain and water. Unfortunately, this explanation seems to be a lackluster attempt, as many others have tested the material and proved that not a single trace of DNA, plant or animal, exists within the material. Reports of this strange jelly-like substance falling from the sky, of which is described as being milky white or translucent and with the consistency of shredded yellow, has been mentioned in old documents in the 1300s, and still it seems to baffle people in the modern era. So what do you make of this new gliding spider? For eons, ancient man would have looked up to the sky and wondered what was up there. Fast forward to the modern day, and various missions have been carried out by different space agencies, helping us to understand our place in the universe. Although it's fair to say we know very little about the universe and the space around us, astronomers and scientists have done a great job at mapping certain areas. Some of the places that we study are those of moons and planets around us, with scientists saying that every year we discover something new about them. In recent years, there's been a special interest in the dark side of the moon. This popular term refers to the fact that the same physical half of the moon is always facing Earth, which in turn means that there's a dark side. This side, however, has been at the center of many claims, most of which include that there's either bases or strange things going on there. One idea is that on the side of the moon humans have managed to build large outposts, and one of the reasons they did this is due to the fact that this part of the moon is always facing away from Earth, meaning they could carry out whatever they wanted without getting caught. It's important to note that space agencies like NASA have denied these claims and said that there's no outposts or secret bases on the far side of the moon. This hasn't stopped people looking through the limited footage and photographs of the dark side of the moon in the hopes of finding something of interest. I was sent this image by someone a while back. They said they were looking through old images of the moon, some of which included the dark side, and said that they noticed a strange object in one of them. They said that the image stood out because it clearly shows what looks like a large triangle object. Further saying that whatever this thing is, it appears to be hovering above the moon, as a shadow can be seen being casted. The woman said the following: "I am a member of the Australian UFO Society, and a few people said that I spotted something interesting. Most of the time, these types of objects can be seen embedded within the moon rock, and these can be hard to make out. But in my opinion, this photograph shows something large hovering above the moon. I have no idea what it is, but I thought I'd share it." End quote. This isn't the first time that strange objects have been seen close to our moon. In fact, during some of the Apollo missions, online users have said that when you zoom into the backdrop of space, you're able to see several unidentified flying objects in the background, almost as if they're watching the astronauts on the moon, with some users saying that the images are kind of eerie. It's these types of photographs that have caused some to think that the moon is a hotspot for unidentified flying objects. NASA have said that these are nothing of interest, and that when these images are taken they sometimes get distorted or show anomalies, and that these can sometimes look like UFOs. Although NASA have said that some of them are impressive, they've said that no further comments should be made about them as they show nothing of interest. As you can imagine though, not everyone believes this, with some UFO researchers saying that something is happening on the moon that we're not being told about. Another interesting story involving the dark side of the moon is that of Cole Wolf. Former U.S. Air Force Sergeant Cole Wolf is perhaps best known for saying that he saw photographs of a base on the moon. Cole worked at Tactical Air Force Command at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia during the 1960s, and is thought to have been involved in projects that were classified. He was recently involved in a bike crash from which he didn't survive. Carl had made the incredible claims back in 2001 and stated that the photographs he sought proved that extraterrestrial structures were on the far side of the moon. Going back, he worked as a photograph surveillance technician. This meant he worked with the machines that process video footage. He claims, however, on one particular occasion he was asked to review some photographs. When he looked, he could see they were taken during a recent lunar mission. While there, another employee asked him to take a look at another photograph. These were the ones that showed a mysterious base on the moon. Cole said the following about the incident: "He pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked like radar dishes, but there were very large structures." End quote. After seeing his photographs, he thought that the discovery was going to be featured on the news. However, he soon realized the news never broke. He then thought the discovery had been covered up. Wolf said on one occasion he was taken into a dark room where they put together images to create mosaics. He said the following: "They were doing 35mm strips of film at the time, which were then assembled into 18.5 by 11 mosaics. Those strips were from successive passes around the moon, and they would build up a photograph. We walked over to one side of the lab and he said, 'By the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon.' At that point, I became terrified, thinking to myself that if anybody walks in the room, I'd know we'd be in jeopardy, because he's given me information he shouldn't." Then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed me this space which had geometric shapes. End quote. As of right now, NASA have denied that any of these claims are true, saying that they are honest about every photograph that's taken and that people are looking too deep into these images. So what do you make of this interesting photograph? Do you think it shows an object hovering above our moon? Or is this a case of pareidolia, where our minds are playing tricks on us? NASA and SpaceX's crew, 2 astronauts, are on their way to the International Space Station, with the most recent news being that the second SpaceX crew mission arrived at the International Space Station, and this was early on Saturday morning. NASA said the following on their website: "NASA's SpaceX crew, 2 astronauts, are in orbit following their early morning launch bound for the International Space Station, the second commercial crew rotation mission aboard the microgravity laboratory." The international crew of astronauts lifted off at 5:49 a.m. on Friday from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. During the live footage, though, some people noticed something strange close to the rocket. In fact, various people took to social media to ask whether anyone else saw the strange. Some said that it looked like a large donut, while others compared it to the Juggernaut from the Alien franchise, which is a large wishbone-shaped craft that was created by the engineers. Photographs soon started to be shared on groups that study unidentified flying objects, but people were torn. Some theorized that the object in question was a UFO, saying that when these types of launches happen, it's not uncommon to see unidentified flying objects, while some UFO researchers and skeptics said it could be debris from the rocket, saying that it could have been something like a ring seal. Although some suggested that this is nothing of interest and is likely debris from the rocket, some argued against this and said that the object seen in the corner isn't from the rocket as it's too big. One person said the following: "After looking at the footage, I'm not sure it's debris. Firstly, the object looks huge, so I'd rule out it being a piece of the rocket. And also, when this thing comes into view, the camera immediately pans to another shot. This has happened time and time again in the past, and people who have watched the live streams have called NASA out on this. Every time a UFO or a strange object is detected by the International Space Station, the cameras either lose transmission or they pan in the opposite direction. This has been documented various times, and this is exactly what we're seeing here." End quote. Another person followed on from this and said the following: "If this isn't anything of interest, why does the camera immediately go to another shot? You can see this object come into view and then it changes. It's a bit strange that it did that." End quote. As mentioned in the past, people have claimed that UFOs have been captured by things like the International Space Station. Though NASA continues to deny a variety of theories surrounding that of unidentified flying objects, it appears that there are pieces of evidence that have confused even the best researchers. Interestingly, NASA have denied a comment on some of these matters, although previous NASA employees have spoken out about these claims, and has said that NASA nor any other space agency has ever seen or detected a UFO, and said that what people are seeing are things like space debris. And when these get close up to the camera, they can take on the appearance of an unidentified flying object. Some have said, though, that it's not like NASA are going to admit if they capture a UFO, but did go on to praise that the government do seem interested in these graphs, and that recently declassified documents have shown us that they've been studying these objects. People are even suggesting that sometime in the near future we're going to get disclosure. Others, though, aren't convinced, and have said that what people are seeing is random pieces of debris, and in this case have said it's likely a piece of the rocket that came off. NASA continued with the following on their website. During Crew Dragon's flight, SpaceX will command the spacecraft from its Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California, and NASA teams will monitor space station operations throughout the flight from Mission Control Center at the agency's Johnson Space Center in Houston. NASA Acting Administrator Steve Jarczyk said the following. It's been an incredible year for NASA and our Commercial Crew program, with 3 crew launches to the space station since last May. This is another important milestone for NASA, SpaceX, and our international partners at ESA and JAXA, and for the future of scientific research on board the space station. It will be an exciting moment to see our crews greet one another on station. For our first crew handover under the Commercial Crew program, end quote. NASA continues with the following. The Crew Dragon spacecraft, named Endeavour, will dock autonomously to the forward port of the station's Harmony module at around 5:10 in the morning on Saturday, the 24th of April. NASA Television, the NASA app, and the agency's website are providing ongoing live footage throughout the docking, hatch opening, and the ceremony to welcome the crew aboard the orbital outpost. So what do you make of this object? Do you think it's an unidentified flying object? Or is it just a piece of the rocket that came off and flew into the camera's view? Space has fascinated us for years. New, interesting discoveries are constantly being made, not just showing us how small we are, but giving us an insight into the wonders of our universe. It's likely that within many of our lifetimes we'll see humans on the Red Planet, as these missions are going to happen within the next 10 years. Jim Bridenstine said the following about the upcoming mission. We are working right now, put together a comprehensive plan on how we could conduct a Mars mission using the technologies that we will be proving at the Moon. Unfortunately, despite these new claims, and this new rush to beat the SpaceX's Mars colonization developments, a report has surfaced from the Science and Technology Policy Institute that detailed information improved to be provided to the United States Congress. That supported the conclusion that NASA does not have the technology and infrastructure to sustain or craft a Mars mission whatsoever by the year 2033. The report also assumed that even if the NASA budget was treated as an unlimited resource, the time constraints in the project specifications would be impossible to meet with NASA's current employee numbers, work output, and overall technological advancements. The report detailed the following. We find that even without budget constraints, a Mars 2033 orbital mission cannot be realistically scheduled under NASA's current initial plan, end quote. Despite this report and additional supporting claims by other corporate space agencies criticizing NASA's developments, the organization still feels capable of supporting a 2033 Mars mission, and says it will use a number of Martian rovers to gather complex information on water gathering techniques and soil samples on the Red Planet to decide what course of action will be best for human colonization. Recently, NASA captured an interesting object close to our Sun. In recent years, this object has become known as the Cube, and theories for what it is ranges from an unidentified flying object to camera anomalies. NASA have pointed out that these objects are nothing of interest, have nothing to do with unidentified flying objects, and have said there's no need for further explanation, as what we are looking at is something like a glitch in the data. However, not everyone agrees with this idea. In fact, another one of these cubes has just showed up at the Sun, and right away UFO believers started to share the image. The image shows what looks like a giant cube close to the surface of the Sun, with some saying it looks like solar rays are causing the object to look a little faded. And as mentioned on NASA's website, the joint NASA-ESA Solene Heliospheric Observatory mission, SOHO, was designed to study the Sun inside out, from its internal structure to the extensive outer atmosphere to the solar wind that blows across the solar system. Launched in December 1995, SOHO was meant to operate until 1998, but it's been so successful that ESA and NASA have endorsed several mission extensions over the past 2 decades, allowing it to cover multiple solar circles. As believers pointed out, though, these mysterious cubes keep making appearance close to the Sun, with one researcher saying that in one of these images it looks like the cube is interacting with the Sun. One user who saw the image said the following: "This image looks strange because it appears it's been blacked out. We've seen this time and time again on places like Google Earth, but now it appears to be happening in space. Something is clearly pulling away from the sun, and even having an effect on it. I'd love to see what's behind it. It's strange that they felt the need to black out whatever was there. In most of these images, the cube is by the side of the sun, but this is one of those times where it actually appears to be having an effect on the sun." Others went on to share more images of these mysterious cubes, pointing out that others appear to be embedded inside the sun, or even interacting with it. As of right now, UFO researchers have said they think these crafts are not from this world, could even be monitoring our planet and watching human civilization. Interestingly, those who have studied these anomalies have said this 2 different times. You have this one that looks kind of transparent and cloaked, then the other version that looks like a giant black cube. UFO researchers have said the large transparent cube has a kind of cloak on them. That means it's harder to see them, whereas the black cubes aren't actually a cube, but were actually placed there in order to hide something behind it. Those who have used measuring tools have suggested these giant cubes are hundreds of miles in length. Skywatchers go on to say it's not just the sun where these large objects are seen, but they've also appeared close to our moon as well. As mentioned, amateur researchers who have measured it have said it's massive. But what do scientists make of these anomalies? Firstly, they've said that what people are seeing is definitely not an extraterrestrial ship, and that sometimes space debris can take on different shapes that makes it look like something is not. NASA and other space agencies have said they presented evidence to back this up, and note that although they look impressive, when NASA scientists have looked at them, they've always turned out to have a mundane explanation. According to one scientist, they noted that many of these images show these anomalies, and all that people are seeing is glitches in the software, and that it has nothing to do with UFOs. NASA backed this up and said that out of the hundreds of thousands of photographs they've taken, they've never once captured an unidentified flying object. Further saying that another thing that could explain what people are seeing is that of space debris, and when this flies in front of the camera, as it gives off the illusion that something is there when it isn't. So what do you make of these photographs? Do you think something is there? Or is this just a software glitch? Ghost and the baby. Everyone knows baby monitors are great for checking on our little ones whilst you're in a different room. However, as per the Hollywood horror movies, there are certain images and sounds you don't want to come through your baby monitor. While spirits and ghosts may only be things of fiction to some, one American couple claimed they've been driven from their home by evil occurrences, and the devilish incident that happened in their house didn't affect them, but their innocent 1-year-old Heather Bruff, 25, had awoken her baby daughter Lily from a nap one day and brought the baby downstairs to sit with the family. But when Heather sat down with her baby in the living room, she noticed something strange. 3 scratches had appeared on Lily's face and were a deep shade of purple. Heather and her partner Josh naturally found this a bit strange, so they decided to check out the baby monitor in Lily's room to see if she'd scratched herself whilst asleep. But things quickly became a little more sinister. The couple noticed a figure in the room with Lily around the time that she was apparently scratched. However, it didn't seem like an intruder or a human one anyway. The figure seemed faint, much like a sort of spirit or ghost, and for the family, it only worsened a suspicion of paranormal activity in their Michigan home. Heather claimed she'd been experiencing strange goings-on for a period of time since they moved into the property. She'd apparently wake up feeling like somebody was strangling her and would hear groaning and shouting noises from a male voice in the middle of the night. Josh expressed his fear that the house may actually be haunted, and soon after the couple began to look into their property's past. It transpired that the house had a dark past, and according to the couple, its former owner was a bedridden old lady who had broken her hip and fallen down the stairs. For some years later, her schizophrenic brother had lived there too, which the family occupied adjacent to the old farmhouse the woman had died in. The couple have had the house investigated by paranormal investigators who confirmed a presence existed in the building. They no longer leave Lily upstairs in any room by herself and are determined to get to the bottom of the eerie happenings in their home. Recently, the family announced their intentions to move. Black Monk of Pontefract, located in East Yorkshire, is one of the most famous poltergeist hauntings. The entity allegedly haunting this property has become known as the Black Monk of Pontefract. It's been at the center of a large amount of evidence gathered to prove the existence of such paranormal entities and strange encounters. The first reported encounters of the Black Monk took place back in 1966, when the Pritchard family moved into the house in the town of Pontefract and became victims of strange paranormal sightings and experiences. They reported small, unexplainable happenings at first, such as that of small objects disappearing, strange foul smells that were reminiscent of a decaying body, light suddenly turning on or off, and that of strange creaking throughout the house at random times throughout the night and day. These reports quickly became increasingly worrying as they began to encounter objects being thrown at them, pictures becoming slashed or broken, and a number of encounters of an entity dressed in a black robe hovering over them as they slept. Though many might claim that such accounts were falsified or exaggerated, during one instance of the haunting, a local MP, the police and a vicar from the church witnessed the event and confirmed the sighting of the monk. Not only this, but the family living here at the time reported that water would suddenly appear in the house. One example they gave was mysterious puddles of water appearing on the kitchen floor. It's said to be one of Britain's most haunted houses, and every year it attracts paranormal investigators from around the globe. Surrey, England's A3 ghost crash. Christmas is a time of feasting and parties, of giving and receiving. However, if you're close to Surrey in England, you may be aware of the haunted A3 motorway. It was a dark December Sunday night in 2002 when a police force in Surrey, England received a flurry of calls. Drivers on the A3 driving south reported seeing a car lose control before leaving the road in a horrendous accident. The police took down the details and prepared to head out. Little did they know this would be the root of a ghost story that would go down forever in Surrey folklore. The police attended the scene, ready to come across the scene of an awful crash. What they found, however, was incredibly puzzling. It turns out that they had actually found nothing. Witnesses said they had seen the car swerve off the road, its headlights blazing as it plunged over the embankment into the woodland. At the reported location of the accident, police found no evidence of any wreckage. There was no car, debris, or tire marks on the road, and the search for both car and driver yielded nothing. Even the woodland was untouched. An officer decided to go further into the undergrowth, and it was there that he made a startling discovery. A car headfirst into the undergrowth, the door smashed in, clearly the consequence of a motor accident of the same nature as the one reported. Except there was something odd about the scene. Spider webs hung from the car's side mirrors. Leaves completely covered the car and weeds grew around the wheels. More shockingly still, rather than a newly discovered body, the police officer stumbled upon a badly decomposed skeleton. This was not the scene of an accident that occurred a few hours previously. It had happened almost half a year earlier. It turns out the person in the car had been a 21-year-old man, reported missing by his brothers several months ago. Police had no idea where to begin their search. He had last been seen out on the town, but nobody knew that he had then driven to Surrey after. Remarkably, the descriptions of the crash from those December witnesses were completely consistent with how police believed this crash from the months before had occurred. Those witnesses on the motorway that December night reported seeing a car leave the road in what they believed was a real accident. Police concurred with all the testified set of events, apart from, however, the actual date of occurrence. Is it that the crash the drivers witnessed was in fact a ghostly replay? The man's body was found outside the vehicle where, severely injured, he tried to crawl his way out of the undergrowth and back to the road for someone to find him. He could not make it up the steep embankment. It was then discovered later that a call was attempted from this man to his brother. His brother did not pick up, and again this man's efforts to be found went unanswered. Months later, on a gloomy winter's night, this ghost crash was replayed when witnesses drove that same road and would be sure to find him, having seen the final vision of the deadly crash and the man's final moments as he headed over the embankment to the fate that awaited him. Agnes Waterhouse was the first woman to be executed for witchcraft in England. Her execution took place in 1566, after Henry VIII had passed the first legal act against witchcraft. Waterhouse's unfortunate fate began when her sister, Elizabeth Frances, was accused of witchcraft. Following torture, Frances confessed to owning a cat named Satan, had taught her witchcraft at the age of 12 years old. Frances told how the cat would speak to her in a hollow voice as do anything she wished in return for a drop of blood. The cat was responsible under Frances' orders for stealing sheep and killing several people, including Andrew Biles, a wealthy man who refused to marry Frances when she became pregnant with his child. It was said that the cat even advised Frances what herbs to take to cause her own abortion afterwards. After 13 years, Frances said she chose to give the cat to her sister in exchange for a cake. Frances told Waterhouse about the cat's abilities, and Waterhouse confessed to experimenting with the cat's powers by making it kill one of her own pigs. After confirming the cat's abilities, Waterhouse supposedly ordered the cat to kill the cows and geese of the neighbors she was warring with. Waterhouse always insisted she had never asked for the cat to kill a human. However, one of the most damning accusations against her came from her 12-year-old neighbor, Agnes Brown. Brown accused Waterhouse of sending a demon to her, who appeared as a black dog with a face like an ape and a pair of horns on its head. The dog repeatedly visited Brown and on the last visit threatened her with a knife, telling her it would thrust his knife to my heart, but he would make me die. When Brown asked the dog who its owner was, it cocked its head towards Waterhouse's home. Alongside the accusations put towards Frances and Waterhouse, Waterhouse's own daughter Joan was also accused of witchcraft. Joan testified that the cat had once offered to support her in any deed in exchange for her soul. Joan refused the cat's offer. While she was found not guilty, her testimony was a further nail in the coffin for her mother and aunt's case. Unfairly, even though Frances had confessed to causing the deaths of humans through the cat, she was given a light sentence, though 13 years later she was hanged following a second conviction. In contrast, Walter House, who had not confessed to causing the death of any person, was sentenced to death. Her trial was attended by several prominent figures including Reverend Thomas Cole, Sir John Fortescue, Sir Gilbert Gerard and John Southcote, Justice of the Queen's Bench. Despite her confessions of dealing with the cat, it is important to note that Walter House would have been tortured throughout her trial. Many to this day believe neither Walter House, her sister, or her daughter had any links to witchcraft. In fact, she had a reputation in her local village for being kind and helpful and a healer to those in pain. The Black Dog of Newgate. The Central Criminal Court in London was opened in 1907. It was built on the site of a former prison known as Newgate Prison. The infamous prison was known for its appalling conditions. In fact, the conditions in the prison was so bad that Henry Fielding, who was a famous 18th century writer, termed the prison as a prototype of hell. A narrow passageway was located behind the Newgate prison, and it was used to take certain criminals to meet their demise. This haunting passageway has become known as Dead Man's Walk. After the construction of the Central Criminal Court, the passageway was converted into a courtyard known as Amen Court. During earlier days, the passageway was known for being the home of a fearsome ghost dog. Although this sounds unrealistic, many came forward with their story of the Black Dog of Newgate. Even to this day, many believe Amen Court is still haunted by this mysterious black dog. The origins of the Black Dog of Newgate go back to 1596, when a man was thrown into Newgate Prison on charges of sorcery. During that time, London was hit by the Great Famine and many prisoners within Newgate Prison starved to death. Starvation led some prisoners to resort to cannibalism. The alleged sorcerer became a victim of cannibalism, and he met his demise at the hands of his, according to the legend. Several days after the death of the sorcerer, his spirit returned to the prison in the form of a fearsome black dog. The ghost dog wreaked havoc in Newgate Prison for several nights. It ripped the limbs off a number of prisoners, and some even passed away from fear of seeing the entity. Many prisoners resorted to fighting the guards as they didn't want to have another run-in with the black dog. It is believed that a few of the prisoners who had managed to escape were a part of the that had murdered the sorcerer and feasted on his body. The black dog hunted down all those involved in the murder. Once the black dog had the revenge by killing those involved in the murder, it stopped the carnage. However, to this day, the presence of the ghastly canine is felt in Amman Court. Some people have claimed to have seen a black dog-like ghostly figure slithering along the walls of Amman Court. A disgusting odor and the sound of the footsteps dragging is said to accompany ghostly figure of the black dog. Freedom of Information Act was sent to the North Wales Police and asked for details about mysterious creatures, dogmen and other strange canine creatures that may have been encountered within the area. Although this seems like a strange request and one that likely wouldn't reveal anything, it turns out the North Wales Police admits there's been over 10 reports of dogmen encounters in which the police have gone on to investigate. The dogman cryptid is more commonly known in the United States, where the majority of encounters happen. However, in recent years, residents in the United Kingdom have come forward with their encounters, stating that large humanoid creatures have been seen throughout the area, and noting that they seem to look like a giant wolf, have the ability to walk on two legs, are extremely fast, can jump high, and are very elusive. These encounters, of course, uncrittered researchers to suggest that the dogman isn't just seen in the United States, but rather all across the world. Interestingly, when you start to research the topic, various different accounts and legends tell of these wolf-like creatures. The police said they had investigated upright walking canine creatures, werewolves, and dogmen, but said they didn't find anything in their reports, and these incidents shouldn't be taken seriously. The document states that these investigations came under large canine and wolf reports, upright canine reports, bipedal canine reports, werewolf reports, dogman reports, and hyena-like canine reports. Residents in the area have been reporting these dogman-like creatures for some time now, and although the police only released this information due to a Freedom of Information Act, it just shows that people are worried about these things and are reporting them to the police. One person described the creature as looking like a large wolf and said that she encountered it while she was driving home. Although she didn't give a specific region, she said the encounter happened somewhere in Wales and that she has no idea what it was, going on to say this thing was easily over 6 feet in length and that it was completely covered in hair. Researchers who have looked into these accounts have said that dogman sightings have also been reported in England. These go back to the 1600s. A researcher said that one eyewitness saw a dogman back in 1995, saying that a security guard was working a night shift and reported seeing a large werewolf-like creature running around. Investigators were called in to check out the area but only found a caravan park, although they did note that a tree had scratches on it around 7 feet up. Locals also reported seeing the creature, saying that it was large, hairy, and had glowing red eyes. This isn't the only place where dogman creatures have been encountered. Another place is that of Pakistan. 2 watchmen reported seeing a mysterious creature they couldn't explain. The reports have come from Pakistan, and the men said it's happening around flea markets. The descriptions have been vague, with one eyewitness saying the creature was black and had red glowing eyes, saying that before encountering it, they had a strange sensation. Other locals in the region said that others were coming forward with reports of strange dog-like creatures. Another eyewitness gave a better description and said the creature they saw was a black dog, was able to walk on 2 legs, let out a loud howl, and once again had glowing red eyes. Black dogs with red eyes are not anything new. The black dog is said to be a nocturnal ghost and in some cases a shapeshifter. It's usually associated with the devil and is described as a hellhound or a ghost. The general physical features of a black dog or a ghost dog resemble that of a normal dog. However, it's much bigger in size and has glowing eyes. One of the stranger reports surrounding that of the dogman comes from New York. According to the report, a woman had arrived home a few minutes after dusk, while her 2 children aged 2 and 11 were sitting in the vaccines. The woman reported that as soon as she stepped out her car, she had a sixth sense that something was watching her. She also said there was no noise coming from any crickets or people nearby. This led her to quickly grab the kids and start rushing them into their house. As she approached the front door, she claimed to hear a loud growl that was described as being deep, turning similar to that of an angry dog. Before anything else could happen, the woman got herself and her 2 kids in their house and closed and locked the door quickly behind her. It wasn't long before she called the husband to come home quickly because a large animal was outside. When the husband came home, it was discovered by this point in time that the family cat had gone missing, and so the husband went looking around nearby to see if perhaps it was bears or a large wild dog. After a moment of searching, the husband also began to notice a strange silence, only to spot a strange large humanoid animal running through the forest nearby the house. This led to him to take aim at the creature, but it was running too fast and was able to get away. This led to the couple to reporting the encounter as a dogman encounter, as any other explanation was impossible to explain. Unfortunately, their cat was never found. As of today, what these creatures are is still up for debate. Skeptics have said the majority of reports happen during the night, and this can cause people to misidentify everyday animals. However, there aren't any animals in the United Kingdom that match the shape and size of these creatures. Encounters with the dogman are still being reported. So what do you make of these interesting stories? Lost Souls of Paris. Every year, the city of Paris receives more than 82 million visitors and tourists that travel to France in an effort to capture that perfect romantic getaway they always desired to experience. Seen as a city of love, Paris is a hotspot for newlyweds, lasting couples, those looking to find someone in their lives, and even those that wish to travel alone and experience the city. However, Paris is much more than just a city of love and holds a darker past, and more underneath the city of love are long tunnels and catacombs known as the Catacombs of Paris, and if you are looking to travel there someday, then it is important for you to understand this darker past. As the city grew, so did its natural death toll. Due to this and a few other reasons, it was decided that the city would build massive tunnels and rooms carved out from underneath the city. It's estimated that the bones of roughly 6 million people are stored down in the catacombs, which is a number that continues to grow as new rooms, tunnels, and areas are continually discovered each day in the underground cemetery. The sheer size of the catacombs are another matter entirely. What many people do not understand, even including those who have helped to map out the tunnels in the past, is the vastness of the tunnel systems, carved out rooms and layers of floors that continue in all directions. So far, estimates place the tunnels themselves to stretch for over 200 miles. This has led many people who enter the tunnels without proper equipment or experience to become lost in the vastness of the catacombs, and has even extended to the most experienced travelers to have to turn around in fear of becoming lost in the complex and disorientating sizes and distances the tunnels and rooms provide. Definitely one of the most well-known facts of the Catacombs of Paris has to be the strange reports of creatures sighted in the deeper tunnels of the underground rooms. There are many times when explorers report eerie noises, such as strange footsteps following them or echoing throughout the tunnels but uncovering nothing, along with the noises that sound similar to whispering or breathing around them. What is even more interesting about this phenomenon is that many explorers report seeing humanoid-like creatures quickly scurrying around corners or stare at them from the ends of long tunnels with only the reflection of their eyes being noticeable. As more and more rooms and layers are uncovered that stretch further down into the catacombs, more reports and witness accounts of these strange sightings occur as well. The strange case of Don Decker, probably one of the most compelling cases of a haunting known to man in the modern age, is the mysterious case of Don Decker. Don Decker was temporarily released from jail and was granted furlough to attend his grandfather's funeral, a terrible man that had raised him from a very young age. Attending the funeral, Don Decker visited the Kiefer family, who were old friends of Mr. Decker, who offered him a night's stay at their house and to drive him back to jail in the morning. As Mr. Decker went into the bathroom to wash his hands in the Kiefer residence, a strange, hypnotic trance came over him as he quickly fell into a zombie-like state and collapsed onto the floor. He woke up a few minutes later and went back downstairs, where one of the Kiefer family members became worried and asked him what had happened after noticing several deep cuts on Mr. Decker's wrists. As Mr. Decker began telling the Kiefer family what had happened and of a strange vision he had of his grandfather sitting on a throne and wearing a crown, he fell back into the strange trance and fell to the floor again. This time, however, unexplainable events began to happen. Water began dripping from the roof and walls where no water pipes existed. The Kiefer family immediately called a plumber, believing the house to be flooding, and when a plumber came, he could not find any source of pipes or water of any kind. Things became more strange as water began coming up from the floor and flying upwards like a reversed rain. At this point, Kiefer residents called the police in a panic to attempt to explain what was happening. As the police arrived, they were baffled at what was happening and immediately told the family to leave the house as they would begin to investigate. As the Kiefer residents carried Don Decker from their house, the water stopped dripping and it appeared the flooding had stopped. The police and the plumber noticed this coincidence and believed that perhaps one of the members of the family was responsible for the action. The Kiefer family went to a nearby pizzeria after being and brought along Don Decker, who was still in his zombie-like trance. While at the pizzeria, water began dripping again from the roof and the walls, and the strange phenomenon appeared to follow them. The pizza store owner, claiming to be able to sense an evil presence in Don Decker, grabbed her crucifix and pressed it against him, which caused his flesh to begin burning. The pizzeria owner then told the family they had to leave and claimed that Mr. Decker was possessed by evil. Officer Richard Walbert attempted to cover up the entire incident as he refused to believe that the event was anything more than an elaborate prank. The other accompanying officers, however, filed reports and regarded the incident as supernatural. When Don Decker was taken back to jail, many different guards, officers, and even the warden had witnessed the strange water phenomenon in his cells along with neighboring inmates and visitors. Demi Lovato ghost. Renowned singer Demi Lovato is a firm believer in ghosts. She revealed that in an episode of the Mac at Night show in 2011. The former Disney Channel star revealed that she saw a ghost when she was 8 years old. A couple of years later, in an interview with BuzzFeed, she revealed that her house was ridiculously haunted, and while growing up, she saw a ghost of a little girl named Emily on a number of occasions. Once caught her talking to herself. When her mother asked who she was talking to, she replied that she was talking to her best friend Emily. Demi Lovato described Emily as very playful. In one of her detailed interviews, Demi Lovato revealed that while growing up, losing things like belts and socks and then finding them again at their usual places was a norm in their house. She said that a couple of times her dad lost his belt, and after looking all over the house they could not find it. However, when they returned to her dad's room, it was perfectly laid on the bed. She described another incident and revealed that one day she, along with her mom and dad, was watching TV and they saw someone coming down from the stairs and then going into the kitchen. Her dad thought it was her older sister. He called her and asked if she could grab him a glass of Kool-Aid. But no one replied. Her dad got kind of angry. However, a few moments later, they were shocked to see her older sister Dallas coming down from upstairs, and told that one night before sleeping she got up to close her closet door. As she was about to shut the door, she saw a little girl who was dressed in clothing that seemed to belong to the 17th or 18th century. Demi Lovato said that she froze for a second and then ran to her sister's room. Her sister asked why her face was so white and what had happened. She told her sister that she had seen a ghost in her closet. Demi Lovato has talked about her haunted house and her ghost experiences on a number of other occasions as well. On some occasions she has talked about the ghost of a girl named Victoria, Greyfriars Kirkyard, and the Mackenzie poltergeist. During the 17th century, there was a number of executions held at Greyfriars Kirkyard when the king at the time was attempted to convert many followers of the Christian faith to the newly founded state religion, of which led to a large number of rebel Presbyterian Covenanters soon becoming the center of martyrdom and being taken to the site to be violently executed and silenced completely. Without much surprise, this has led to the Greyfriars Kirkyard being referenced by paranormal researchers as one of the most documented and reported haunted locations in the world. Though many hold the belief that the site remains to be the center of a number of paranormal entities, many of them being among the 18,000 victims executed during the 17th century. Others claim that the main entity behind the hauntings to be that of Sir George Mackenzie, the one man single-handedly responsible for the suffering of the victims and their torture. Proof of this claim comes from the fact that the first reported attacks from a paranormal entity came back in 1998, Shortly after, a homeless man wanting to find shelter during a storm opened the tomb to Sir George Mackenzie. The first attack took place the following day after the tomb was broken into when a passerby attempted to enter the tomb, but was blasted back by a cold force of air that knocked them down. Later that day, another woman was found near the tomb's entrance, passed out and lying across the front of the tomb with her neck completely covered in bruises that made it appear as if someone had choked her. When she came back to consciousness shortly after, she told those concerned that she was walking by the tomb and found that she couldn't breathe, slowly losing consciousness shortly after. Since this day back in 1998, there have been more than 500 reported violent attacks near the tomb and throughout the Greyfriars Kirkyard, with an untold many more left unreported or fear of being ridiculed. The Big Bay Point Lighthouse, located on the north shore of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The Big Bay Point Lighthouse has similar origins when it comes to the cause of its hauntings. Back in 1896, when the lighthouse was first constructed and opened to begin its duty of warning those of the dangers of its foggy shores, built on top of a 60-foot rock mountainside that falls into the lake beneath it, a man by the name of William Pryor became the station's inaugural keeper. He supposedly disappeared and was believed by many to have fallen into the choppy waters after an especially foggy night and thunderous storm. Interestingly enough, the location is now operating as a romantic bed and breakfast with fireplaces and spa services to match. But the current innkeeper is not at all happy about the rumors spreading. Linda Gamble has done a variety of exorcism techniques to help guests fear more at home after many years of reporting slamming cabinets, doors, apparitions appearing, and a few of the residents being attacked by a strange ghostly figure. It appears, however, that these attempts have been fruitless, as many still report the haunting of the lighthouse to this day.